Nigeria is counting down to a new administration next month. One area many are anxious to see the direction of the government will be the area of diplomatic activities, especially on the African continent. And as the biggest economy and largest democracy on the African continent, what will be the diplomatic agenda of Nigeria in the continent? And this week on Africa Weekly, this will be our focus. And I am Charles Alpha, welcoming you to the program. Kenyan President William Ruto has implored the two conflicting parties in Sudan to fully comply with the resolution of the Intergovernmental Authority on Development IGAD Heads of State Summit held last Sunday. This includes an immediate cessation of hostilities, allowing unrestricted access to humanitarian aid, and extending full cooperation to the IGAD Heads of State mission when it visits Khartoum.
The deteriorating situation in Sudan is of great concern to our region and continent. The indiscriminate deployment of lethal power and air power by both RSF and SAF has targeted military and non-military targets, causing devastating damage to property as well as strategic public infrastructure. It is therefore critical for an international coalition of all the actors that have been involved in supporting the restoration of civilian rule in Sudan to act with urgency.
And our President Muhammad Buhari of Nigeria says the ongoing fighting which erupted in the Sudanese capital between the country's military and the powerful rapid support forces is unwelcome. This was while receiving the transitional president of Chad, General Muhammad Idris Deby Itno, in Makkah, Saudi Arabia, where both leaders discussed the Sudanese crisis and implications for the continent.
President Muhammadu Buhari, who reviewed the crisis situation, which already claimed several lives, described it as unfortunate and disturbing. He called on all neighboring countries and the international community to prevail on the warring sides to stop fighting and negotiate. The president maintained that Sudan deserves peace after all it had gone through in the past. The Chadian leader had told President Buhari that the situation in Sudan is bad. He said if not arrested, it will have serious repercussions on neighboring countries. The Chadian leader said already his country had closed its borders to Sudan and reinforced security. General Muhammad explained that he had spoken to the leaders of both factions, saying if everyone tries, especially President Buhari, the situation will be normalized.
Joining us now in the studio is the Nigerian ambassador to Burundi, His Excellency Dr. Elijah Onyagba. Ambassador, we're pleased to have you join us live on Africa Weekly.
Thank you so very much. It's my pleasure being here once again.
All right, fine. Thank you so much. Now, to begin with, can you help us paint a vivid picture on where Nigeria's diplomatic relations ranks in the African continent at the moment?
Well, thank you very much. This is transition for Nigeria. And I think it's a very good opportunity to look at our foreign policy to be able to appraise it. And then, of course, the essence of this is to ensure that there's a smooth handover from one administration to the other. And I can tell you that, our foreign policy under President Muhammadu Buhari is Nigeria first, its neighbors, and then Africa. Nigeria prides itself as the giant of Africa and, of course, a leader in the continent. And you can see how we have played that role perhaps in the last 8 years of this administration. One of the things you see is that Nigeria is at the forefront of a whole lot of Africa issues. One of the things you see is that Nigeria is also holding very strategic position in terms of even the development finance agencies within the African continent. One of the things you see is that Nigeria has also become like a voice for the African continent. So if I were to assess the outgoing administration's impact or the effects of its foreign policy in Africa, I think that the president has done extremely very well.
You know, as someone who has been part of Nigeria's diplomatic engagement and also as an ambassador to Burundi, where would you say is Nigeria's area of strength in relations with other countries?
Okay, thank you. Now, I'm going to take this within the context of the African continent, and I will also try to expand it. Within the African continent, Nigeria is a leader in all forms, whatever way you want to look at it, whether it's in military power, whether it's in economic power, whether it's in population, whether it's in the size of a market, and so on and so forth. So the whole of the continent actually looks up to Nigeria in leadership in so many ways. You will also agree with me that even the fight for corruption, which was one of the things that our president prides itself with, he was also recognized as a champion at the African Union. So in all ramification, Nigeria has actually led from the front on issues relating to the African continent. But if I have to also expand it, one of the things you find is that Nigeria keeps engaging, and also carrying the entire continent along, whether it's engagement with China, it's engagement with Russia, Turkey, it's engagement with even the United States. You know that Nigeria played an active role in the recently concluded US-Africa Leaders Forum that took place in Washington, D.C. So everybody that wants to come into Africa, be it a technology company, be it a development finance institution, you must actually want to find out what's going on with the Nigerian, with the Nigerian as a country. And one of the things you find is that you have the people here, you have the manpower, the size of the market. I mean, this is the largest market in Africa, an economy of about $560-something billion or thereabouts as GDP. So this is not a market you want to toy with. And that's the reason why whatever you're producing anywhere else in the world, your target is actually Nigeria, because anything that comes into this market obviously finds its way to the consumers. So to that extent, everybody's interested. The world is always interested in what's going on in Nigeria. This is a country that have over 200 million people, the largest black nation on the face of the earth. About 1 billion of us in Africa, meaning that if you count 5 Africans, 1 person is in Nigeria.
All right, now to the incoming administration, like you did mention a while ago. When this president-elect emerged as the winner of this presidential election in Nigeria, there were a lot of agendas, set what people want him to do. By the time he's eventually sworn in. But for you now, what should be your what do you think should be the diplomatic priorities, for the incoming administration?
Thank you very much. I think one of the things that we need to do, also to remind Nigerians and viewers, is the manifesto of the president-elect. The last section of that manifesto was devoted to foreign policy. And by the way, what's foreign policy? It's basically the instruments, the strategies you use in driving your domestic policy in the international arena. And basically what the manifesto basically said that there are 3 basic issues, or the 3 areas of focus for this administration. Number 1 is to protect the country against every form of external aggression. That's the number 1. The first, strategy in driving the foreign policy, securing the nation against every kind of external aggression. Number 2 is actually to promote the best outcome for the country in any kind of engagement with other nations, with other bodies, meaning that if Nigeria goes to engage with the World Bank, if Nigeria goes to engage with the US, with China, with Russia, we should be looking out to getting the best possible outcome in that engagement. And number 3 is also to improve Nigeria's standing and dignity in the Committee of Nations. And of course, these 3 is quite huge already. And I'm hoping that the president-elect will do everything possible to ensure that the frontiers of our foreign policy is expanded on these three standpoints. And I'm also hoping that there will be a lot of amendments. I'm hoping that he's going to drive policies that will ensure that, for example, Nigeria's diasporans are part of our democratic and electoral processes. So, there's also the consular issues as well, because when we talk about foreign policy, it's not just about how we'll engage with the other communities or with the rest of the world. It's also even how we treat our own citizens that are Nigerians that are also in diaspora. Part of the things you see is that there are challenges. Sometimes you see videos of a few things that are actually happening across our embassies all over the world. I believe that the incoming administration must spend time in improving consular relations. I believe that the incoming administration will actually, work with perhaps National Assembly and see how the amendments into the Constitution and the Electoral Acts can happen to ensure that we begin to find Nigerians that are outside the country participate in our electoral processes. And I believe that this is achievable. In addition to that, I expect that leadership in the African continent, because part of an extract from the manifesto talked about establishing a G5 within the African continent. I'm sure when you talk about G5 within the continent, you're probably referring to Nigeria, maybe Egypt, South Africa, and maybe Kenya from East Africa and all of that. Some of maybe the biggest 5 economies in the continent, to be able to have a common ground on certain issues. Once with this group of 5 countries agrees on certain issues, it makes it a lot easier for you to have that agenda driven. I'm also expecting Nigeria, being the leader of the black race, basically, to actually stay from the front and help the African continent drive the Africa Union Agenda 2063. So these are the things I'm expecting to see from the new administration. The manifesto document is there for anybody to make reference to, but I think that it's all-encompassing, and we are hopefully looking forward to an improved relations as far as foreign policy is concerned with Nigeria and the rest of the world.
Yeah, Ambassador Elijah Onyeagba, thank you so much for spending time with us on Africa Weekly. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so very much. God bless you.
All right. The African Development Bank has set aside $525,000 grant for the establishment of an African Fintech hub, which is an online portal that will provide a one-stop shop for all fintech activities for the continent. Now, this comes as the bank signs the grant agreement with the African Fintech Network for the project. Joining me right now via Zoom is Dr. Segun Aina, OFR. He's a president, African Fintech Tech Network. Doctor, we're pleased to have you join us on Africa Weekly.
Good day, Kelvin. Thank you very much for having me.
All right, now, Charles here talking to you, Doctor. But let's begin this way. Now, using the Nigerian experience as a peg, what is the state of fintech development and penetration in Africa?
Yes, I mean, in the last 5 years or maybe 10 years, we have seen significant interest and development in the technology and digital space. And that is because of the evolution and development in digital technology itself, smartphone technology, and the internet. These are the things that have made it possible to be able to grow the potential that are bound in the technology space, most particularly Fintech, which is the shortened form of financial technology. In the last 4 years or so, we've seen a lot of organizations, startups in the Fintech space that have grown from some form of obscurity many years ago to prominence, given the impact they have been able to make. And today, I mean, in 2019, for instance, Africa has had not less than 6 fintech unicorns. A unicorn is a technology or financial organization that is not quoted on the stock exchange and that has achieved a valuation of not less than $1 billion. We have at least 6 of them in Africa today, with 4 based in Nigeria or operating from Nigeria. Of course, they also operate across African countries. So this has helped in creating a lot of employment. This has helped also in solving a lot of problems and challenges, particularly in the area of the payment system.
Now, doctor, just now, many people, especially in the rural areas of Nigeria, still have doubts about the credibility and safety of utilizing fintech service for a transaction. Now, you just made mention of how it is solving problem and the figure, whooping amount of figure you say fintech has generated over the years. Now, if you look at the number or the amount that has been generated, you agree with me right now that majority of these people are living in the rural areas. Now, if you look at, what you want to achieve with this technology, how is, fintech network surmounting these challenges, you know, with for those in the rural areas?
Thank you very much. That's a very good question because the ultimately the aim is to ensure 100% financial inclusion. Financial inclusion meaning every Nigerian, every African should have access to basic financial services, not necessarily bank accounts, but basic financial services, because the needs of those in rural areas are very, very simple, not sophisticated, just wanting to move cash, to have some small amount of cash, or to transfer, or to receive transfers, and so on and so forth. Unfortunately, because of various factors, infrastructural deficiencies, cost of data, and so on and so forth. And also the fact that the size of transactions are low. The rural areas have been neglected for a long time, even for conventional banking services. In a lot of our rural areas in Nigeria, there are no commercial banks or deposit money banks, as we call them, even where there were before, particularly in some part of the country. The increased rate of insecurity by armed robbers and so on and so forth have caused a lot of banks to close down. So we may have a community of 10 or more villages without any bank at all. So this is where the role of fintechs, the role of payment system companies, comes into play. Today, you have things like agency banking, where people can, cash in, cash out, can do some transactions using POS and some other factors that come into play, transfers through phones and so on and so on and so forth. Yes, yeah, financial inclusion has been increasing, and in 2020, the Central Bank of Nigeria, working with other stakeholders, decided to rejig and retool the Nigeria financial inclusion strategy, because initially it was aimed at achieving 80% by the year 2020. But 2020, we were only able to achieve only 64%. So the solution was then designed that it is through digital, through organization, through industry, the fintech industry, that we can achieve the goal. And the goal was then moved to 2025, achieving 95% financial inclusion by 2025 using digital. And there's a process in place that will ensure that a lot of people now in the rural areas are connected through. They can have access to data. Data is simply expensive. There is a need for some things to be done by the authorities, particularly government and the telcos, to see how we can make cost of data less expensive.
It's so good to know what you are doing there to help those in the rural area. But recently, the AFDB rolled out an intervention funds for the fintech sector. How can this help?
Yes, this will help a great deal. And coming home to Nigeria, I used to be the president of the Fintech Association of Nigeria, which is a member of the African Fintech Network. We know that a few weeks ago, the Nigerian government rolled out the HIDICE investment in digital and creative enterprises, for which African Development Bank invested $170 million or so. Nigerian government also invested, plus other international investors. The whole aim and the idea is to help the startup industries, help the technology sectors, help fintechs, help the creative industry. And it's a around $20 million fund. The importance of that is that we are domesticating, as it were, funding requirements for startups, for innovators, and so forth in Nigeria. Moving to the African landscape, I see it as the president of the African Fintech Network, which has, for now, 34 African countries, national fintech associations as members, including Nigeria, South Africa, Ghana, Uganda, and so on and so forth. And hopefully, by the end of 2023, we will have about 50 African countries. In pursuit of our objective of reducing the inconvenience that we have in fintech and being the voice of the fintech ecosystem and the voice of the consumer, the African Development Bank approved for us a proposal to create the Africa Fintech Hub, which will be a platform where anything that's happening in the fintech space, can be accessed. Today, we have a lot of data. Some are different from each other because there is no authority, there is no central platform where investors, both local and international, can access, where people that want to even do transactions can access, who can do this and so on. So this platform will help, in providing, becoming an African digital hub, where not only national fintech associations, not only fintechs, not only the consumers and the public, but even people from the international front who want to do things back, because Africa remains now the last frontier for growth and development. There's a lot of interest now in Africa. Look at UK, for instance, where it's been reported that they have 1,600 startups for 68 million people, or China, 6,636 fintech companies for 1.4 billion people, or India, ratio of 1 to 201,000. So we still have a long way to go. So we can still accommodate a lot of the startups, a lot of the fintechs who can grow to become big because of the sheer size and need for digital services in Nigeria and in Africa. So in the next 10 years, we foresee a situation where, because we are going to then have a lot more number of people being digital natives, most of our transaction will not be in cash. It will be in other. It will be on digital platform. I foresee a situation where the rate for data services would have crashed because of the larger number of people that are using it and because of the efficiency that they have. So I see a much more digitized world, which will enable Nigeria achieve its digital economy objective. But a lot still need to be done, particularly at the governmental level, accessing government services. And government services also have to be digitized so that you can plug into individuals and the companies that they deal with.
All right, President Africa Fintech Network, Dr. Segun OFR, thank you so much for talking to us on Africa Weekly.
Thank you very much.
All right. All right. That's our package this week on the program. Many thanks for being part of it. I am Charles Alpha.